welcome everyone to our event, My Life, My Business. Wish I was here, where we really deal with a variety of topics that deals with engagement, but it's so diverse, but it all points in one direction: living an engaged life, living a life that you enjoy. So, a special welcome to my co-host, Shanaz, who's going to be leading us uh, and sharing with us a topic of her choice. And it's always so rich and informative as usual. And I know I always say it, but I can't wait actually. And welcome, Shanaz. Over to you.
Hi, afternoon, Jock. Hi, and afternoon, Julia. So last week, you took a deep dive, or maybe not so deep, into the Bible, and I was thinking a bit about that, but kind of needed to say because I was aware that I was saying in some of the previous 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago about the whole situation with as a man thinketh, and then the idea of the environment. So I thought after last week, I have to say again, reiterate that just because I believe in the effects that the environment has, absolutely does not mean that I don't believe that people can change, and that that people cannot change. And that's the reason why I am in the field of work that I'm in, because I do believe that anyone can change. But more than that, I think that I firmly believe that no matter what your circumstances, it doesn't matter your genetics or your environment. When you put yourself in the right environment, and you put yourself in a spiritual environment, then I believe God can do absolutely anything. And the Bible is full, or is a testament to people who were born with genetic disorders, and were healed. And also, they weren't only healed physically, but they were healed emotionally and spiritually. So I've just got to, that's my disclaimer, that there are definitely things that psychologists, psychiatrists, and doctors cannot do anything about, but certainly God can. And so that is what I want to say. And with that, one of my favorite um people who speak about scripture, um but she is also a what does she call herself, a neurolinguistic, and she studies neuroscience, is Dr. Caroline Leaf. And I love her work. And I am going to read. I'm going to be boring, and kind of I've chosen a chapter that I thought I could start with, and when I speak again, when it's my turn again, then I will continue with the other section that she does, that would kind of be a follow up on today. So firstly, she really believes, I actually did this with a different, well, in our church, and we've also I've done this with different people as well. So what I love is that she says that, I also love the brain. So as I said, I'm always fascinated by it. And she says that God has given us the ability, and you know and she speaks worldwide around it, to actually do our own brain surgery. And when you understand how God put our brains together, it is absolutely fascinating, and it really excites me. So before I let me go on to it and explain. And so what she says then is that our thoughts, our imagination, and choices can change the structure and the function of our brain on every level: molecular, genetic, epigenetic, cellular, structural, neurochemical, and electromagnetic, and even subatomic. So that means that through our thoughts, we can be our own brain surgeon as we make choices that changes the circuits in our brain. And I think that that is so fascinating. She says, what I love is she said that we were designed to do our own brain surgery. And basically what that means, and I have seen this happening right in front of me, as we engage and we do work with children in our ministry at church. We have worked with so I know of two instances. The one was a little girl who was on the autism spectrum, on the autism spectrum, and we would kind of pray for her regularly, but also her mother, in she went to a really brilliant school and she was in the right environment, and her grandfather loved her and always, used to tell us she's going to be able to do lots of different things. And literally we saw this young she's a young lady now. I saw this little girl grow up in front of me and have been absolutely amazed at how, when you place someone in the right environment, um, and you give them the right support and you facilitate the process, as well as which, giving the parents the wisdom and the idea that, and the parents had the faith, or the mother had the faith, particularly the grandfather had that kind of faith that his granddaughter is going to be able to do anything. And I have kind of seen this happen in front of my eyes, how this child has developed and defied some of the genetic issues of her disorder that she has, and has become a lovely young woman. Furthermore, there is a little boy in our church. He is, how old is Ezra? He's 8 years old. And so because of what I know, we have trained our children's ministry in resilience, and we've worked with, facilitating children's um, development. And a lot of the kids that we work with, unfortunately, their parents are most of the parents are drug addicts, and the parents or are involved in gangs, or parents have passed on due to gang violence. And this young boy, he literally came to us in nappies. He would walk around to where the church is unsupervised and come into our youth groups and whatever activities we had for the kids. He also has FAS, which is fetal alcohol syndrome. So his behavior was off the charts, and I regularly would inform our people that work with the children and generally how to work with him. And the amazing thing that happened is we love him, like, he's part of our family. And everyone in our church now understands how they need to manage him. And I can tell you that the amazing thing, he wasn't also attending school. And we would pray for his brain and we'd say, Lord, we are wanting to do the brain surgery. Help us to do the brain surgery on him. And I can tell you that he is attending school and his behavior has changed so much. That it's absolutely amazing to see. And I know that, you know, when you do when you support and you understand the power that you have and the power of your brain, the environment doesn't can influence you, but you can still do these amazing things. And that is why I just love the fact that we can work with the brain, that God has designed our brains to do the brain surgery on us. And so just why I'm mentioning this is that these the little girl on the autism spectrum and this little boy, we cannot change his parents for him, and we cannot as a church take him out of the situation that he is in. We can't adopt him or foster him, etc. And so we've got to do what we can do when he is with us for 2 or 3 hours at a time, on Sundays. And so our we work when we work with our children that come from these backgrounds, we our work is intentional. Everything that we do is intentional, and I think that I really think that it's not us, but it's really when, because we've started to understand how the brain works and that we can do our own brain surgery. So I just want to explain also, I've seen, the manifestation of that. I'm also an example of that. I think I've mentioned it before that my father had bipolar, and his family has a particular genetic, bipolar is quite linked to genetics. We are predisposed to it. And also, they actually did research on my dad's family because of this genetic link. And I want to say that we are five siblings, and none of us have bipolar. And that is because of our environment. And that when you put a people in the right environment, in a supportive environment, the environment can start to um, change, or how we perceive our environment. And this is what Dr. Leaf is getting to. How you perceive your environment can change your brain. And if you go back to my conversation 2 weeks ago, I was explaining that there's this genetic link and the environment. And the way we can facilitate this is how we perceive our environment. So if you perceive your environment as this is not good for you, this is not where you should be, etc., then you will continue thinking that way, and it will affect your brain. You will get depression, you will suffer things and the negative aspects. So while there are positive things to this, experiencing our brain and changing our perceptions of our environment, it can also have the negative effects. So it can work for you and it can work against you. And so I guess that this is then the challenge for us. The other thing that she says is that the choices become signals that change our brain and our body. What this means is the more choices you make for yourself, the choices that you make for yourself will also change your brain and your body. And it doesn't have to be dictated by your genes. So in other words, there are ways to change the genes. In other words, there are ways to interrupt the signals that your brain sends to your genes, so that you do not have to your destiny, or where you end up, is not determined by your genes. And when you think of, when I use my siblings and myself as an example, we had lots of support. And we, my mom intentionally exposed us to a range of different activities, as well as going to church, as well as educational activities, and was supportive. What that essentially means is that we started to we didn't see my dad's bipolar as something that we also going to have. My mom refused to, accept that. And so the idea then is that again, it can work for you or against you. So if you believe that you have it, whatever, then you will have it. If it's difficult for you, then it will be difficult for you. um, and so she then also starts to talk about epigenetics, and what she says that it's the ability to change our genes, and it can be, epigenetics can be both positive and negative. And so these are the key issues. It can work for you and against you. And when, and the amazing thing about your genetics, or the amazing thing about epigenetics and how God created our brains, is we can actually change future generations positively or negatively. So the choices that you make might impact generations that follow. So, as I said, it could be so because of, if I use my family and my dad's bipolar as an example, because my mom, and I see that you said yes, interrupting intergenerational curses basically, or illnesses or disorders. You can interrupt it. And this is what epigenetics is about. But you can also get the opposite side. The choices that you make will have an impact on future generations. So it's really important that we make and we think about um, how we would like to influence the future generations, and that should inform our choices. Even your mental health can, how you know, whether it's whether it's your lifestyle can affect future generations, or it can be mental health, it can be a range of different things. And so every choice that we make can actually influence future generations positively or negatively. And if you, for example, I work with intergenerational violence, and I've seen how grandparents were violent in their relationship. The parents are violent in their relationship, and the young person who I work with, they violent or experience a violent relationship. So it can work both ways. But what she does say, which I love, is she says that you are not destined, however, to live out the negative patterns of your forebears, but you can instead make a life choice to overcome them by tweaking how they are expressed. So what she says basically is that the sins of your parents can create a predisposition but not a destiny. So in other words, my dad's and the bipolar and the mental health issues in my dad's family can has predisposed my siblings and I to mental health issues. And but we can decide where this goes, and there are particular ways that you can kind of do it. And she says you are not responsible for something you are predisposed to because of your ancestral, for because of ancestral decisions. You are, however, responsible to be aware of them, to evaluate these predispositions, and to choose to eliminate them. And so I love that, because this is exactly what I have sort of done in my life, where I've been aware that in my dad's side of the family, there are mental health. I'm aware of them firstly, and I find that people aren't sometimes aware. So I'm aware of the how I'm predisposed to mental health issues. And what that has meant is that I sometimes, in at different points in my life, have needed additional support. I've gone into counseling, I've seen a psychologist, um, as a woman particularly, and it was just an amazing experience. I was telling the psychologist, and he knows about my dad's bipolar, and I was explaining what I was going through when I had my period, and my menstrual cycle. And he explained that in his work and in his experience, where there has been bipolar in families, that the women tend to have really, they can become quite depressed during their premenstrual, during their cycle, because it predisposes us. And so that really empowered me, actually, to know that actually the reason why, I'm firstly, I don't need to go into hospital, that, and that this is temporary. And so that awareness that I'm predisposed has made me become aware that I need to take care of myself, and that I need at times in my life I may need different kinds of support. And I think that my mom's awareness of my dad's family and their predisposition to my siblings has made my siblings aware that we may need some additional support, and that we take care of ourselves. And I think that that's very important. And I have also decided, I made conscious intentional choices to get the support, and look at ways that I can prevent becoming to a state that I'm feeling quite depressed. And I think that often, and I educated myself around bipolar and depression. And I think that unfortunately, maybe some people are not aware of what the predispositions are in their family. I know when I've worked with some people in our church, we speak openly, and like you said, in churches, maybe it's epigenetics is actually, in fact, Dr. Caroline Leaf says it's as old as the Bible, if you want to talk about intergenerational curses. But it could be substance misuse. And so I know that to be able to speak about the substance misuse in the history of your family, to be able to acknowledge the violence in the family, sometimes even the incest in families, or the sexual violence in previous generations, is really important, so that you can consciously make new choices in for yourself and for your future generations. And that is why she says to choose to interrupt them, or to eliminate them. So it is very possible. And for the young people in our church who come from that background, what we've decided as a group, as a church, is that we want something different for them. And we cannot change the environment, for unfortunately, otherwise we'll have to take them all out of the area that they come from. But we can intentionally put in the necessary support, and help them, and equip them, and empower them with the knowledge about how their brain works, support them with what we can, so that they can become resilient, and so that they don't have to, their predispositions does not have to be their destiny. And we can already see it with some of the young people who actually do not belong to gangs despite their age. And we've just been amazed. So I know that this actually works. And what she says is that when you make a bad choice, the genes switch on in the hippocampus that dampens the stress response. So, in other words, what tends to happen, and so this is where we need to kind of be aware. Each time we make a bad choice, instead of your conscience telling you, or your body telling you this is not a good choice, you actually weaken the stress response, so that it becomes easier. Now, that can also happen when you make good choices. So, what I'd like you to imagine is the amazing thing about our brain is the neuroplasticity. And for those who don't know neuroplasticity, this is so awesome. Neuroplasticity actually refers to the ability of the brain to change in response to your thinking, right? So it can, again, it can work for you or against you. So I'd like you to imagine that when if you want to start new behavior, right, you imagine that your brain, the neural pathways in your brain, they look like trees with branches, right? I want you to imagine trees with branches. So the more positive, good choices you make for yourself, right, the more branches of these good choices will occur in your brain. So think of a tiny plant that suddenly grows more branches. That's how our brain responds to our thinking in the neural pathways, right? So that means that so if I think that I'm going to run my 10 kilometer, the more I think that I'm going to run that 10 kilometer, my brain will tell me you're going to run that 10 kilometer, and then automatically in a couple of months' time I will run that 10 kilometer. But if I fill my brain in the same way, I can't do a 10 kilometer. The little branches that I can't do the 10 kilometer will grow into this, like, imagine a tree, small tree with branches will grow into these branches about I can't do the 10 kilometer. And then that will mean that I will not be successful. So in that sense, many of the people that we work with will be thinking I'm a failure. And so despite, and the environment will tell them, everything will tell them that they're a failure. But how we change that, and what is so amazing about what God has created in our brains is the neuroplasticity, which means that at any point in time we can start new neural pathways in our brains, right? And if you just repeat it through a range of different ways, you can actually do it. But if you repeat those new thoughts, I can do the 10 kilometer, and you repeat it for she has this idea, 21 days. If you can focus for 21 days on I can do that 10 kilometer, by the end of the 21 days I will believe that I can do the 10 kilometers or whatever thing you are faced with. And so, this is the amazing thing about our brains. So, it can work for you or against you. And what she says then is that our perception of the environment plus how we manage our environment controls our bodies and our lives. So, if you change your perception, you change your biology. You become the master of your life instead of the victim. So I'm going to repeat it again. Our perception of our environment plus how we manage our environment controls our bodies and our lives. And I think that, so we can, it's how we perceive, know that that is how you perceive your environment and how we control our environment. And so if we want to be successful and we want to help the people in our lives who are important to us be successful, then we need to empower them with the ability to change their perception as well as help them manage the environment that they are in. And that's what we're trying to do with some of the children and young people in our church, and what I try to do in my work. So that's me. Thank you.
Thanks, Shanaz. Wow. Well, I think I'm going to probably just reserve my comments from to when you take us to chapter 2 of your talk. But just to say, to those listening, the one nugget for me is don't resign yourself to predispositions and then, play victim to them and say, well, there's nothing I can change because this is what my great great grandfather was like, great grandfather, grandfather, and so on, so on, so on. And therefore, yield. And the encouragement is doing the brain surgery, on yourself. That is wonderful encouragement. So yeah, take heart. And that's how I take heart, by the way. And by the way, all the other stories you were sharing were actually quite inspirational. Thanks. So yeah, so we await the installment, the next installment from Shanaz. And by the way, bon voyage, Shanaz. Have a fantastic time. Come back safely. And yeah, I suppose we are meeting next week, are we?
Thank you. Yes, we are. I'm back on Sunday.
You're back on Sunday. Okay.
Yeah.
Hope you're not. If you're too tired, just let me know.
No, I'm back Sunday morning. I should be fine on Monday.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay.
No, wonderful. Thanks. All right. All right,
Bye.
everybody. We will see you next week then. Bye for now.